Welcome to the second of our two-part webinar series, How Android Enterprise Protects Your Workspace with Citrix Endpoint Management. Today's session will focus on security fundamentals for Android Enterprise with Citrix Endpoint Management. We have two presenters today, Chetan Thacker, Principal Product Manager for Android at Citrix, and Mirko Bullez, Partner Enablement Manager from Google. We also have Jonathan Campos and Jeroen Lebon on as well from Citrix, helping with questions. Questions can be asked at any time in the questions pane of the control panel on your right, and we will be answering the questions at the end during our Q&A session if we get time. Today's webinar is 1 hour long, so I will now hand over to Chetan. Off you go.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody to our second part. So just before we jump on to the agenda for the second part, I just wanted to give a quick recap of what we discussed last time, right? So last time around, we discussed about the basics of setting up Android Enterprise with Citrix Endpoint Management, the different types of applications that you can actually publish with Managed Google Play, and how you could do that with Citrix Endpoint Management. We also talk about the work profile compatibility, and I know a lot of questions were asked about the work profile on company-owned devices, WPCOD, and that is coming out soon. We also, mentioned about managed configurations, how you can actually add managed configurations for your application, and also how you can use them as you publish those applications via Citrix Endpoint Management. And finally, we covered, a Citrix MAM SDK of, what is happening with the MAM SDK, how we are moving away from app wrapping to the SDK. And finally, we showed, where we are moving for the future with a Citrix mobile workspace experience, which brings in security as well as the experience. So let's move on and go to what we're going to cover today. So today it's again, as I mentioned, experience and security. So that's going to be the theme of our part 2 presentation. So initially, Mirko is going to go cover the Managed Google Play, what's new, right? What is new with that experience when it comes to private app publishing, the app updates, and also something which you guys must be wondering about is app bundles, right? And then we're going to shift focus again, as I said, on security, right? So, what are we doing when it comes to security and privacy with Android Enterprise, and how you can take, how you can achieve those with endpoint management, right? So, Mirko, with that, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chetan. So let's kick it off here. And first, let's take a look in what's new in Managed Google Play. Because to help mobilize your entire workforce, you need a platform that is flexible and secure. And Android is the most widely adopted mobile platform on the planet. And on Android is a framework that allows you to leverage this platform for your business. So to support business usage, we ensure that security, manageability, end user, and innovation needs are met in the platform and framework. And as you will see in the following slides, we strongly believe that Android is what will enable businesses to thrive in constantly evolving markets we are living through today. So within Android Enterprise, ManagePlay allows you to publish, distribute, and configure apps. So it's an ecosystem in which developers, IT admins, and end users can interact. And these three actors have different goals and needs. And we aim to offer the best possible experience to each. So first, let's take a look at the developers, which it can be in-house developers who work inside a company or external developers. In both cases, they can use the Play console, which is the web console for developers, to publish their apps. And with ManagePlay, they can also restrict apps to selected enterprises to publish what we call private apps, and they can set up testing tracks so that enterprises can test new versions of their apps before they release them to production. Within the Play console, they also have access to many other tools like monitoring, crash reports, and feedback. And then let's take a look at the second group, which are the IT admins. With ManagePlay, they can browse the Play Store and select apps. They can distribute apps to their users, and they can configure them with managed configurations to simplify things for end users. So IT admins can do all this from your EMM console, where where you as Citrix could either call our APIs or embed the ManagePlay iframe, which I will talk about more in just a few minutes. And finally, then we have there the end users. So with ManagePlay, the apps they need are automatically installed and configured by the IT admin. So they can get to work immediately with their Android devices and don't waste time setting it up. And if they want more apps, they can go to the store to find the apps they need. And over the years, we've brought new features to ManagePlay to make deploying Android simpler and more secure than ever. So private apps are apps that are distributed to one or multiple entries, maybe, multiple enterprises, maybe, but that are not publicly available on the Play Store for anyone to download, as you would know when you just are using it on a private device. But for private apps, enterprises have needs that are different from public apps. And the publishing process for public apps is not well suited for private apps. It's long and it's long, and some policies like the restriction on using permissions like SMS allocation don't necessarily make sense. And this is why a while ago, and I think it was around 2019, we've introduced a lighter and faster publishing process for private apps. You just need to provide an APK and a title. We apply a reduced set of policies to your app, and your app is published within minutes after you click the publish button. This new process is available directly in the ManagePlay iframe and has been already widely adopted by customers. So if you take a look at the table, there are now 3 different methods to publish a private app: directly from the Play console, from the iframe, and via the custom app publishing API, which can be used to programmatically publish private apps. The API and iframe both benefit from the fast process, while the console still follows the same process as public apps. In 2020, so not so long ago, actually, we've simplified the process. We've unified the rules across all methods, with the fast process being applied to all 3. And we've also allowed transfers between the methods, as you can clearly see in the table. So now, therefore, all the methods, you only need to provide an APK and a title. Your app is published within minutes after you click the publish button, and we apply a reduced set of policies. So it will be simpler for customers to choose which method to use. And this choice will not be set in stone, since it will be possible to switch between the different methods. So which methods should you choose? What should you be aiming for? So if you don't have a developer account, publish your private apps from the iframe. It's the simplest and quickest method. You can still create a developer account later if you need to and transfer your apps there. If you do, however, have a developer account for your apps already, it makes sense to keep it, because it gives you access to more features like customizing your developer profile or using the API. And if you plan to publish a large number of private apps or are building your own internal publishing interface, then you certainly will want to use the API. So this is just a recommendation, and because you can switch method anytime, your customers can start with any method without worrying too much about this choice, and they can change later if they find out that another method works better for them. And you might have heard of some changes. We're changing format from APK to AAB. So in 2021, we are continuing with our annual target API level update, requiring new apps to target API level 30, which is Android 11, in August and in November for all updates. So be prepared. And in addition, as announced earlier this year, Google Play will require new apps to use the Android app bundle publishing format. And this brings the benefits of smaller apps and simpler releases to more users and developers, and supports ongoing investment in advanced distribution. And meanwhile, already over 750,000 apps and games already published to production on Google Play using app bundles. Top apps switching save an average size of 15% versus a universal APK. So Users benefit from smaller downloads, higher install success rates, which is especially impactful in regions with more entry level devices and slower data speeds. So developer switching can use advanced distribution features such as Play Asset Delivery and Play Feature Delivery. I embedded some URLs here, which we will also share at the very end after the Q&A. And for example, the YouTube video embedded here will show you how to convert APK to AAB, how to use the so-called testing tracks if you want to deploy to a specific set of users because you're testing the application and then you want to enroll into anybody, so using the testing tracks, or how you can opt into Play app signing and what choices are available to you, including when and how to retain access to your app signing key, which of course is very important for the reason being that if, for example, you're using a key and somebody is leaving the company and that key is no longer available, that might get you into trouble for the fact that if the key is gone, you might need to start re-signing or redoing all of their applications. So this is why it is important to understand where or how you should save the key. So, and what about updates? So when a developer publishes a new version of an app, devices that have this app installed automatically receive the update. And what is good to know is that there is a so-called default behavior. And what's even more important to understand is that we have made some changes to this default behavior because it's not a one size fits all. So there is a default behavior and IT admins can customize it to fit their needs. And we're giving even more control to IT admins, as we will see in a video, because that is what enterprises have requested. So first, let's talk about the default behavior. It is optimized for minimizing the impact on mobile data and on battery life, which sounds great, right? And minimizing your user disturbance, which is also great, to be honest. But apps are updated when the device is connected to Wi-Fi, charging, and not actively used. So when in certain circumstances, in certain companies, will that be the case? Well, if you're a firefighter, if you're a policeman who's always on the road, then this probably means it's nearly unlikely that apps are going to be updated, which is not really suitable for that type of enterprise, right? So typically apps are updated during the night in this particular case, and the user doesn't even notice it. And that's the default behavior for all Android devices. But again, would this really fit in the scenario for a firefighter, for example, as I just mentioned? So the default behavior is you only get the updates when it's connected to Wi-Fi, charging, and not actively used. And the vast majority of users don't change this, which might be fine. And more than 90% of the Android devices currently apply this behavior. And it works well for a large number of enterprise customers. However, again, some customers have more advanced needs that this default behavior doesn't address. That's why we changed something. We changed the common app update requirements. So some customers want app updates to be installed faster. It could be that the app version is closely tied to the server version, so they need to really be in sync, and therefore the app needs to be updated right away when the server is updated. Or it could be that the customer doesn't want a fragmented fleet with tens of different versions across the device fleet. In these cases, customers would like the app to be updated as soon as possible across all the devices. On the other hand, some customers want to delay the update until they had the time to test and validate it. And these are the two most common requirements from enterprises for app updates. And we've launched two new update modes to address these. First, for fast updates, we're introducing a new update mode called High Priority. And with this mode, the update is installed as soon as possible after it's published by the developer. This means the app is updated literally within minutes if the device is online. And if the device is offline, the app is updated as soon as the device becomes online. So with this mode, IT admins can be confident that their fleet of devices is always on the latest available version of the app. And for customers who want to delay updates, we've introduced a new mode called Postpone. With this mode, the update is postponed for a maximum of 90 days. After the 90 days period ends, the update is installed with the default mode, so waiting for the device to be connected to Wi-Fi, charging, and not in use. But you don't need to wait for the whole 90 days. After you've tested the update, you can change the method to the default mode or to high priority mode. The update can, however, not be postponed indefinitely, because never updating apps is bad for security and for the user experience, and 90 days should be more than enough to test new updates. So in summary, you now have 3 update modes available. 1, postpone, pause updates for a maximum of 90 days. 2, the default mode to install updates regularly while minimizing the impact on mobile data, battery life, and the user experience. And finally, the high priority mode to install updates as soon as possible after they've published. And we think, to be honest, these 3 modes will address the majority of the use cases. So let's take a look in, actually, I would say not let's take a look, but I think from our perspective, ManagePlay is actually the way to distribute apps on Android. And it's already the most secure way to distribute apps on Android. And it comes with a set of powerful tools, and it's becoming even more flexible and simple to use. So therefore, we strongly encourage you to recommend ManagePlay to your customers as the single way to publish and distribute apps on Android. And if you're a customer already, then that should be the way forward to use it. So that's all for the app publishing right now. And let's move on to security. And as certified ethical hacker, this is, of course, one of my favorite topics to talk about. Because when we talk about security and privacy, or data loss and exposure of corporate data, that is often the biggest concern for companies. Why? Because what if my company's secrets get sold? What if data leaks and someone is going to use it against me by creating counterfeiting products for maybe half the price? Well, in that case, the company will be at risk, and this is something that definitely should be avoided. And this certainly does not only happen in movies, as we unfortunately all know. And recently this happened to a German-based company where all of a sudden, just before launching their new product, an overseas competitor launched it for 30% of their market price. Incredible, right? Why? Because their blueprints were stolen via phishing email that had malware attached and gave hackers access to their internal networks. And the rest, I just told you. So by leveraging Android Enterprise, including the Android Security and Privacy Framework with all its whistles and bells, will give you enterprise-grade security and privacy features to protect from so-called PHAs, possible harmful applications, data loss, malware, phishing, and many other security threats out there. So, and there are actually several ways how data can be stolen or how secrets can be exposed. I already mentioned the example of combining phishing with malware, which is extremely powerful when targeted at the right persons at the right time, which we call a targeted campaign, for example. And the worst of this is there are so many free tools available out on the internet, like Modlishka, EvilJinx, GetGoFish, that everyone, including you, can become an experienced fisher at no cost in a matter of hours just by watching some decent YouTube videos. Another possible approach could be capturing data from the network layer by doing a man-in-the-middle attack, or when someone has local access to the device by trying to root the device so data can be extracted. And while all of this may sound easy to pull off, one needs a lot of combined skills and maybe even specific hardware to really make this work to perform a successful hack or steal data. And in the past, during some of my live performances, I showed how this works with a Wi-Fi Pineapple, with a rooted Android device, with some specific software, that it was pretty easy. But we have made a lot of improvements, specifically already in Android 10 when it comes to the network stack, to be better protect against this. And we will see some of those as we move on. So Android has a whole bunch of security features lined up that are there to protect you against the attacks outlined in this slide. And as I mentioned, Android has a multi-layered security strategy to comply with regulations and privacy, provide privacy and security. And That multi-layered security strategy is something that I want to go and take a look on right now. It's based on hard and software and contains a lot of built-in features which have amazing names like ASI Linux, mandatory access control, secure computing, address space layout randomization, position independent executables, control flow integrity. Hey, and if you want to know more what this is, and if you're a partner, you can find all the information in our academy. And some of this stuff I will be taking you through right now, because when I talk about address space layout randomization, this is actually which randomizes the memory addresses that apps and services use every time they run. And this is I don't need to say any bad words, but this is a problem for a hacker, because every time you spin up the application, it starts in another space of the memory. So it's hard for an attacker to guess where he needs to start attacking it, because if that would be the same, then it's easy to guess, right? But now it's randomizing. So we have position independent executables relocating a program every time it opens for dynamically linked executables. And then we have control flow integrity, which is a security mechanism that prevents attackers from hijacking functions and pieces of code from apps and using those apps and their permissions to perform malicious actions. And we, of course, also have our own MTD product on the device, which you get for free, by the way, which is Google Play malware protection services. We have hardware tampering, safeguarding of encryption keys, 30-day updates, and many, many more features. So all these features are built into every device that is GMS capable, Google Mobile Services capable, and can be managed by an EMM like Citrix and enforced by a policy to protect your valuable data and prevent loss or exposure. And a little bit later on in the slides, Chitan will guide us actually through this on what possibilities do you have within the Citrix Endpoint Manager to be able to leverage these functionalities. So let's take a closer look at some of the security mechanisms of this multi-layered security framework. And let's start from the bottom actually to the top. So let's start with the hardware. We start with a secure Android devices that utilize a trusted execution environment, which is called the TEE, which you will hear more often as we go, to run privileged or security sensitive operations such as PIN verification, verified boot to ensure device hasn't been compromised. And for now, just think of the TE as a small separate operating system that runs on the device as well and handles all security critical operations. And I will explain this in more detail just in a few minutes. But then you already have an idea of what the TEE is. So a separate OS actually on the same Android device as well. And in Android Oreo, we have added support for tamper-resistant hardware in the form of a discrete chip, which is separate from the main system on chip on the device. And then we move a little bit higher to the operating system platform. And the operating system OS enforces encryption by default and isolates apps through the sandboxing with secure enhanced Linux. So we also protect access to internal operating system components and issue monthly security patches so OEMs can keep their devices current and protected. And we have Google Play Protect. So Google Play Protect brings together on-device app scanning together with cloud-based app analysis and machine learning to combat potentially harmful applications being installed from any source. So not only from Google Play, but also if you would still have installed something from outside Google Play, what I highly would like to discourage you, it would still be able to find bad malware inside that application if that would be installed from outside Google Play. And it does this by continuously scanning. And by carrying out deep app analysis and decision-making in the cloud, Google Play Protect is always on and up to date, protecting you from the latest malware threats. And what about management APIs? Management allows you to enforce your IT policy on the device to further lock down your device fleet and protect your company's data whilst on the device. So remember, the EMM software I spoke about earlier, that can be put on the device. The EMM can leverage very specific instructions, again, the APIs, to put these management controls in place. For example, the PIN, X number of characters password, enable or disable face recognition, locate the device if it's lost or stolen, and even wipe the device if necessary. So Android Enterprise uses hardware built-in security features that perform critical security tasks like authentication, key management, and cryptographic operations that take place in a dedicated security space on the device. And the benefit of separating these kind of tasks is that if the device gets compromised, the security relevant information is still unlikely to be stolen. Private keys to encrypt data, for example, cannot simply be accessed as they reside in another space that runs on another separate OS called trustee on the device or the TEE. And also security features like Android Verified Boot live there. And Verified Boot is the process of assuring the end user of the integrity of the software running on the device, which typically starts with a read-only portion of the device firmware, which loads the code and executes it only after cryptographically verifying that the code is authentic and doesn't have any known security flaws. Because if it does, it'll shut down again and it will just not continue. So let's take a look at some more information around the hardware. We know now that built-in security hardware helps us to prevent and detect security flaws and to enforce strict security relevant operations. So let's take a closer look at what the TEE, the Trusted Execution Environment, is really used for. And I already shared it's a secure part of the processor, and it's used for key generation, key import, signing and verification services, and has its own memory. It is responsible for the security critical operations on the device, ensuring that the sensitive data is stored and processed in an isolated and trusted environment. And which features does it now really provide? Well, lock screen passcode, fingerprint, protection of the management of key store keys, protection confirmation, and DRM, so digital right management. And we also offer features like version binding, where it ensures keys created with a newer operating system cannot be used by older versions. Or we offer rollback prevention on 8.0+, which prevents the downgrading from the OS to an older, less secure version. And this is important to understand because to protect your data on lost or stolen devices, as an attacker could exploit the kernel and use a vulnerable version to access company data or install a persistent exploit. And again, if you have rollback prevention, that's not going to help because it will see that it's trying to downgrade the OS and that is just not going to work. So Android is built on security enhanced Linux, which provides mandatory access control on all processes from the kernel. And this means application sandboxing is enforced through the operating system, and any exploits that are present have very limited effect on other apps or the kernel. So with ASI Linux policies, each layer of the operating system is protected. And Project Treble, for example, introduced a new hardware abstraction layer called HAL that can help prevent the vulnerability in a system on a chip from even reaching into the operating system. Think of this as an example of this would be an exploited vulnerability in the Bluetooth hardware, which we have seen in the past, that, however, now would not get past the hardware application layer to compromise the OS or kernel. So it would only be able to compromise its own domain. And I just mentioned mandatory access control. And as part of the Android security model, Android uses security enhanced Linux to enforce mandatory access control over all processes, even processes running with root or superuser privileges. With ASI Linux, Android can better protect and confine system services, control access to applications, data, and system logs to reduce the effects of malicious software and protect users from potential flaws in code on mobile devices. And what about the security domains? So, for example, in order to prevent attacks on the operating system, ASI Linux also separates the OS into many small sections called domain. So if the system is compromised, the attack is limited to that domain. The security enhanced Linux kernel confines privileged processes to certain domains. And there are certain rules which ensure that prohibited behaviors can never occur. And these are known like never allow rules. Think about those as the rules that you have in your firewall where you say, hey, this is strictly not allowed, this can never happen. And what about the operating system platform? So I already told you that if an exploit is found, the attack is limited to the domain it is in. And we have some features that I already mentioned, like KASLR, kernel randomizing the location where the kernel code is located on each boot. We have the PI, the position independent executables that again change whenever something is started, and the control flow integrity that I already mentioned. And furthermore, of course, we have application sandboxing, and we have the work profile separation to separate work data from the private data. Another very interesting one, which we have and our competitor doesn't actually have on board, is an MTD capability, which is a mobile threat defense or protection mechanism, which is called Google Play Protect, which is built in on-device malware protection for Android devices baked by machine learning. And Google Play Protect uses the SafetyNet APIs. SafetyNet is a series of Google security services that provide mobile threat detection capabilities on Android to assess the status of Android devices. The good thing here is this is not only on enterprise devices, every even consumer device that is GMS capable has this built in. So SafetyNet provides services that help protect devices from security threats, including device tampering, bad URLs, potentially harmful apps, and, for example, fake users. And it consists roughly of 4 parts, which is attestation, safe browsing, reCAPTCHA, and verify apps. So attestation helps detect verified boot status and device compromises. What I told earlier, if you boot the device, it's checking actually if it's not compromised, and this is being done by the attestation service. Safe browsing helps provide a safe browsing experience for users and prevents malware and unwanted apps and social engineering. reCAPTCHA protect your app from malicious traffic, and that's a free service that you probably know that uses an advanced risk analysis engine to protect your app from spam and other abusive actions. So if the service suspects that the user interacting with your app might be a bot instead of a human, it serves a CAPTCHA that a human must solve before your app can continue executing. And with Verify Apps, it allows EMMs to query a device potentially harmful application install status and prevent a user from disabling Google Play Protect. So with this, you could say, let's check the device first. And if we, for example, see that Google Play Protect is disabled, then we do not allow any further usage of the device and let's put you in quarantine. So these tools, again, are available to all developers, not just those building enterprise apps, but the device must be GMS certified. And what about Managed Google Play? Well, we already discussed some of the Managed Google Play, which is the largest app store in the world with millions of apps, and it can be managed securely with Android Enterprise to equip workers with what they need to work. And we can securely distribute apps. So IT admins have robust controls to select, deploy, and configure apps. Users can browse apps from the IT-approved allow list with Managed Google Play. And to further ensure privacy for the company and users, Managed Google Play uses obfuscated identities. So these identities are managed and mapped to real usernames by the EMM, Citrix in this case, and not by Google, who have no visibility of this mapping. So Citrix might know who your users are, but we do not know, but because we only see an obfuscated URL on our end, which is again better for the privacy. And what about hosting and, for example, publishing internal applications? Well, Managed Google Play is the secure, efficient, and reliable way to host internal corporate apps for delivery to employee devices. Internal company developers can build private apps that can be deployed to only users of their organizations and not shared widely on the public-facing Google Play, as I already mentioned. And for this, you could use tracks. I said, first deploy it to a few people just to test, and if that's successful, then deploy it to the rest of the organization. And if you do not want to upload your applications to the Google Cloud, you could also host them on your on-prem, for example. And there are some advantages and some disadvantages, which you could find on our documentation or probably discuss with Citrix if needed. What about manage and configure apps? Well, apps can be remotely configured and have permissions set via policies by an EMM. And apps can be mandatory and silently pushed to users' devices, as well as be prevented from being uninstalled. And with that, I gave you a bunch of information in the last 30 minutes around privacy, security, around applications and how those can be managed. And with that, I want to give it to Chetan so he can actually guide you through some of the stuff, how this can be configured and utilized by using Citrix Endpoint Manager.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Mirko. And that was great information. So, whatever Mirko mentioned, of course, we support most of those security policies. And what I want to do is I just want to quickly go over a few of them so you understand that, how you could set it up, right? So, of course, we heard Mirko mention about app verification, right? So if you go to a restriction policy and you should enable app verification on, which makes sure that the Google Pay Protect is always running on and the end user cannot switch that off, right? So that is something, a great policy. We encourage people to use it. Also, Mirko did mention about apps, right? How can you make sure that you blacklist apps, right? So we have the ability to do that as well. So next, as we move, safety net attestation, right? I don't know if a lot of you guys know, but you can actually go to our SEM settings and set up safety net, right? There's an API key you get from the Google console, and you can schedule the attestation that you want to get the information, between 24 to 1,000 hours, however you want to set it up, right? So that is also available to you. Encourage people to use it as part of security. All right. And then, the other part was also, what do I do with my applications, right? I mean, there are certain permissions that I don't want to grant certain apps, right? I mean, I don't want just the example on the screenshot that you can see. I want to block the calendar or Facebook from accessing the calendar or Instagram from accessing the camera. It's useless if you do that, but just an example. But these policies are available to you. If you go to our app permissions policy, you can individually, block or grant permissions to apps, or have a global set of deny or block or grant to these applications, right? So this is another security feature that is available on our endpoint management service that you can utilize. This is on per app basis. All right. Again, another one is device compliance in action. I'm not sure, if a lot of you guys are using that, but this is one of the most powerful features, according to me, when it comes to our Citrix Endpoint Management, is the ability to take actions based on device status, right? So, of course, I mean, as Mirko mentioned, that AMMs can take action based on what they see on the device, right? For example, he mentioned that you can selectively wipe a work profile, right? So an example is if your device, I'm just showing it right here, that if your device is jailbroken, you can take an action to wipe the device, right? So this is another very powerful action based on device status that you can use. There are multiple actions available to you based on device properties, user properties, and so on. Highly encourage everybody to look at those and use that as part of security on top of Android Enterprise. The other part, which is pretty unique, if you could go back, Mirko, which I didn't cover, which is pretty unique to Citrix Endpoint Management, is we have the ability to hide apps if your passcode is not compliant. Now that is, just part of your passcode policy. Of course, again, we give the choice to our admins whether they want to implement that or not. So if you choose, basically what will happen is if your passcode is not compliant, your apps and your shortcuts will be grayed out, which means they won't be able to use those apps till they comply with the passcode policy, right? So which is another great security feature that is available as part of our passcode policy. All right. And again, the part that we didn't cover is, again, manage config. You can always use, we are part of the OEM config community. We support, all the manage app configs. One of the examples that was given was around Chrome, and how you can enable the different settings in Chrome. Similarly, if you have your applications which are going to add manage app config, they are completely supported, and you can definitely add them. So this is another example where you can actually take a particular application and set policies for that application using manage app config. All right. So now, I'm going to go and revisit my MEM SDK, right? Because last time when I mentioned MEM SDK, you would be saying, hey, why are you removing all these things? So based on what we have mentioned in the past two sessions, it becomes very clear that Android Enterprise by itself provides you a lot of protection, whether it comes from encryption, whether it comes from app restrictions that I showed you, whether it's the interactions between the apps, because now you have a completely separate container, or when it comes to authentication, right? So based on that, the only part that is missing is the VPN capabilities or the micro VPN capabilities. That is, our strength that we still continue to provide with our MAM SDK. So if you guys haven't already moved your applications to the MAM SDK, it's a great opportunity right now on the Android side. As we mentioned that we support most of the platforms or IDEs, and please go look at a documentation, which we will share as well, to move your applications to the MAM SDK. And with that, Mirko, over to you again.
Yeah. Oh, back to me again. So thanks for that. And I mean, when we see actually how we protect devices, I mean, you can clearly indicate, and it still says 2.5 billion here, but I was watching Google I/O last week, and there we already mentioned that we're already protecting more than 3 billion devices, which is really huge, right? And Google Play Protect is actually backed by the strength of Google's machine learning algorithm. And Google Play Protect is constantly improving in real time, and it's checking more than 100 billion apps every day, and that's just huge. So when customers are using Google Play Protect alongside Managed Google Play, the number of devices with potentially harmful applications is really, really low, like 0.004%. And the Transparency Report website does provide transparency into our efforts to reduce PHA rates on devices and in Google Play. And I've added some of the URLs where you can find more detailed information, because I think that's the benefit from our side. We are open to post whatever CVEs or whatever we're trying to do to increase security and privacy. That's something we're trying to be very open in. And also, if you see how much we have paid for bug bounties and all that kind of stuff is really amazing. But you can truly see on this website that, for example, by every version we're growing, the number of PHAs is going down by almost 50% or more, and this is just really incredible. So, and you all maybe might have seen or heard about this Gartner slide where we had achieved the highest rating for security controls for mobile devices. But the thing is, if we, Google, are rated best there, how come that many people still think Android is insecure? Well, I think it's because of an incorrect perception and comparing using Android privately versus using Android for work or Android enterprise, so to say. While using Android privately, a lot of security related features are often disabled on purpose, for example, to install apps from untrusted sources because it's cheaper than buying, or enable USB debugging to get some specific apps going and circumvent security measures, or not securing network traffic using VPN technology while using unsecured networks. I mean, this can be compared against leaving your key in the front door locked because you don't care, but that key is there for a purpose, to lock the door and to keep strangers out. So for enterprise usage, you need to make sure that these critical security features, which I mentioned and Chitan just showed you, you should be really using these with the EMM tooling to make sure that you can get rid of all those security concerns. Because again, also with last week, FluBot and all the other stuff that you hear outside there, 99% of what's happening there is all when you get sent an email, when you get sent an SMS, 99 out of 100 times, it's always you need to install an application to be able for them to succeed and take over the device. Honestly, if already with one single policy from the EMM where you disable install applications outside of Google Play, you would be for 99% more safe than whenever. So this is really something that people need to understand. There's a huge difference because private devices and enterprise devices and the ways how they are secured. And I can understand, because I think it's great if you can save $50 because you don't want to buy that application, but with free applications from unknown sources comes free malware to your device, and that's something that you definitely should try to remember. what we have been doing for the broader industry, like our OEMs, is building trust. And Android is built on industry-based standards. So we believe that creating an industry standard is a great way to drive our industry forward. So the critical components of Android, and we Android open source and Google Play, have been implemented using a standards-based approach and have been attested through various industry certifications. So the work we have been doing here also helps all of you as well, because of the way we've approached things like FIPS 140-2, common criteria, CMMDP. You are able to leverage the investment we have made, and this is especially true for our OEMs to build devices that can be certified for highly regulated market, because we already did a lot of the certifications and they don't need to redo that again. It saves money and it saves time. So with that, I would like to give it back to Chetan to see if we have any questions or answers which are needed. And again, please don't leave yet, because after this slide, I have a bonus for you that contains some of the URLs that I've mentioned throughout the presentation, which will help you and give you a better understanding when it comes to using the new AAB format, or understanding the new work profile, or understanding security and privacy, and where you can find the relevant information. Chetan, to you.
Thank you, Mirko. This is really great. And before we just jump on to Q&A, I hope that the last two sessions that you guys went through show you like why is it important to move to Android Enterprise. Based on the poll that we had earlier, hopefully that number changes next time when we get into a next webinar, between Citrix and Google. So please go ahead and look at all these content when you have time. And if you haven't already done it, or if you're midway, continue your migration to Android Enterprise. That is what is required. It is one of the most secure platforms compared to legacy DA, right? So thank you for that. And Jonathan, do you want to go through the questions, or do you want me to go through one by one?
I wanted to mention one quick thing. I spoke about, the security, the security report that we have seen where we scored the highest. That was actually 2019. There is a new one coming, and this is expected to be fall. So just pay attention. Maybe you will see something new pretty soon.
So thanks so much, Mirko. Thanks so much, Chetan. Yaron has answered some questions in the chat window, but we did have a question for Mirko. The modes to distribute applications for business critical operations such as manufacturing and logistics sites that need to have granular deployment windows per site for their rugged Android enterprise devices. How can that be addressed? Connected to the modes you presented if we're running a global operation. Quite a bit on the question.
I would need a little bit more background, because I do not understand the exact ask. Because to me, if you are running an Android enterprise, for me there is only one way. I mean, if it comes to the applications, right? You have to manage Google Play, and from within manage Google Play, and that's something that we covered in the previous session. You have obviously two ways. Either you can distribute, and I think that's what the question is about. And if not, please correct me. But I think the question is about, should I be uploading my applications to, for example, manage Google Play? Or should I be hosting my applications locally? Is that what the question is about? Do you understand that correctly?
That's my understanding, correct.
Yeah. Okay, so if not,
yeah, Mirko, I think the question of Joachim is like, how can he granularly make the difference between the same application and the different test tracks for different sites and different type of devices? So he has like one big global operation, and he wants to do the same application to different devices on different sites. So more granular control.
So I think what you currently need to do, but that's an interesting one, and I would need to see, and you can gladly provide him my details for further follow-up. But the way I would see it right now, and I think that's the pain point for him, you would now need to divide into categories of devices, and then also divide on categories based on the country. But I think that may be something that would be a great improvement. So you can always give him my contact details, and we can get into contact to see what the pain point currently might be. And if we have an ability, and I think that's why this is so great to come in contact with our customers and to try to help you to get a better understanding of what the ask is of the field, on how we can bring new features and some things better to the field. So again, I think at this point of time, because you would only have the ability to create certain groups, and I think that is not enough for him. So we would need to see if we can maybe do an update somehow, that we can give a more based selection criteria where you can say not only this people, but this people and these type of devices. So I think if I understand it correctly, for him, it needs to be more granular. And I really would be interested to see more of that use case so I can bring this back to our PMs.
Thanks so much, Chetan, Mirko, and Jeroen. We did have another question here, really basic question. Can I have videos of both sessions? Yes, absolutely. So these sessions will actually be made available on demand. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a week after both of these presentations. So they will be available on citrix.com/events. You'll be able to see that there. In addition to that, we did bring up we do have another question, and I know that this is an Android Enterprise webinar, but what about iOS? Is there something exactly the same as Android Enterprise for iOS? And the answer is yes. And we'll definitely be having a future webinar around that. We don't want to necessarily take too much time talking about it, but iOS's user enrollment is exactly what the equivalent of Android Enterprise is to Android devices. So we'll bring that up in a later topic. That is available now, and it is in a preview state for Citrix Endpoint Management. So definitely reach out to support. We can absolutely get you connected with the right person there.
Sure.
All right.
And to add to that, Jonathan, right? Just to want to make sure the Android Enterprise has been there since a long time. Mirko, correct me, that was Android 6 or 5, when Work Profile actually was started.
5 already.
5
was a Work Profile.
Yeah. So, just to let our, our audience know that, this has been there. This, it has gone through the testing times. And to a point where, now that it's deprecated by Google and Android, from Android 10 and above. So, it's been there. So please, that's not something that is brand new that you guys, would be challenged to be using. So just wanted to mention that.
All right. Chetan, I believe you had a particular question you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, so there was a question that I read through it, right? So of course, Mirko showed you all these cool app updates and all these new features, right? So a lot of these features actually we are working with Google. They're going to be available starting around, some of them are available. Some of them are going to be available around June 2021, especially around the app updates. I'll send you the link where it is. And as we do is, as these become available to us, we are going to be utilizing, those APIs and providing you with those features. So all of them are on our roadmap. The managed iframe that was mentioned, that was already covered in the first session, and that is currently available to all our customers. We have that capabilities, and I know that there are more improvements coming to managed iframe. As they come through, we add those improvements, right? So that's the way it's going to happen.
Let me know when I'm allowed actually to share the links that we have on the last slide, because then people might have time to take a screenshot or to write something down, and they do not necessarily need to wait until they get the slides. Because I'm not sure if you have any other questions. There
is one question. Maybe Mirko, you can start, and I can go by. Is, can I delete a previously loaded app and use iframe to install a new version? This is because the original app used an old sign key.
If the app is, so what is always important to apps is that if you want to distribute a new app again, it needs to have the same signing key, right? Because otherwise you cannot bring it back in. But the thing also is that you cannot bring the same app in with or that has a same bundle ID. So these are some of the restrictions that you need to pay attention to. So if it's the complete same application, that is, I'm not sure what the end user is trying to achieve. So can you reiterate on that again?
Hey, Mirko, I think additional to this question, the question is also if you remove that application by accident, yes, on purpose from the developer console. It's
Yes.
not right. It's like in a hold state. How can the customer then reinstate or reuse the same application with the same application ID?
So if it's deleted, then it's probably not possible. If it's paused somewhere, then it could be possible, but I'm not an app developer expert, but that's a question that I can take, and then we need to follow up. So you need to make sure we can try to get around this and give some feedback to the user who is asking that, because I'm not an app developer, not an app expert. So that's something for me that if you would ask me how I can hack into the WPA3 network, that is something that I might be able to explain. But this, unfortunately, I'm not able to answer. So we need to take that question offline, and we need to give some feedback to the end user there.
Yeah, sure. And just to add to that, right? If you're using our MDX technologies, you need to use a different key. I'll send you the documentation regarding that. And as I mentioned earlier, right, with ABB, we're going to start supporting that by the deadlines as mentioned by Mirko. But just be aware of those documentations around what keys need to be used while use MDX versus non-MDX, right? So we'll send over the documentation over to you.
So we also did have another question with respect to the version of Zen Mobile on-prem that does support the IFrame. That supports IFrame.
Yes, I might. It would either be 10.12 or 10.13. Please do verify. I'm not 100% sure, but we can definitely look at the documentation and let you know that. But it's around those releases.
Yeah, we definitely know that the latest version does support.
It's the latest version. 100%. If you pick up the latest version, you should have it, right? So
absolutely, absolutely. All right. Just looking through our questions here. Go ahead,
Jonathan. There's one more, which is around does the browser protection service cover apply to only default Android browser and secure web, or will it also defend a Google Chrome or a third-party browser is deployed to the device? Right. So, what some of the browser protection stuff, right, that I showed, what we can do through Manage App Config, it is basically based on that browse, the developer or the app owner of the browser and what kind of configurations they are providing you. Of course, given it's Chrome, you have a whole bunch of Manage App Config available to you to enable safe browsing, to disable incognito, and so on and so on stuff. When it comes to secure web, of course, we have our own protections, as you know, through our MDX policies as well. So basically, that would put onto the app developer of what they provide through these Manage App configurations to add the additional protections for that application.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's absolutely a great question. So with respect to just quickly looking at these questions here, and I want to thank Jeroen's answered quite a bit of them directly to the asking party here. So definitely has answered a lot of these questions here. Okay, what about with respect to, is there a tag that tells you on an Android device that has a separate chip protection system? I'm assuming like a TPM chip, if I'm not mistaken.
That's a good question. The question is then, of course, I think you would somehow like to leverage. So I know there are devices that have a TPM chipset included, but I do not know if we have something. So it would be good to know why this question is being asked, and then we can follow up. Because you have some identifiers that can be used in the system, right? This is also how we know if a system work or Android Enterprise capable, and there are many other tags that can be used. But the question is, even if we have the API that can do this, which I'm certain, is have we made this API available to the EMMs? So, and therefore, I would need to have more information around this question, because if it makes sense, then we should definitely see if it's worth of, for example, sharing this to EMMs so they can leverage this for a specific policy or whatsoever.
Yeah, and additional to that, Mirko, we know, of course, of other OEMs like Samsung, Zebra, that have additional OEM config management sets with APIs available, and we know that Samsung has a different chipset in there. So that combined with our advanced configuration and deployment services, you should be able to identify the device on that tag. But we need to check if we collect that information.
And again, even it's what you say. If we don't have them, depending on the device manufacturer, it might be the case that they give you additional capabilities. So this is why it would be great to know what's behind this ask, because that would be great to.
And Mirko, is it possible that the Android recommended set of devices do check for this capability before giving them the stamp of Android recommended, right? So that would be something like to check.
So depending on if it's there, that would be something that I need to check, because obviously I do not know all the things that is needed from an Android Enterprise Recommender perspective. That's something on the website. I don't know, maybe that's currently in there, maybe it's not. I cannot say in detail.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think we are out of time here.
So
I'm gonna hand things back over to Amy Claire, or Chetan. Did you have another something else?
So Mirko just wanted to go through the bonus slide. So just if you could.
Right.
Give me
Absolutely.
seconds, and then we can sign it over. Thank you.
You should see it on the screen now, right? Right, you can see it. Yeah. So the first, the app development piece is what you had asked me, because I know you have received questions from your customers around changing from APK to the new app bundle. And again, I spoke a little bit about it. The real benefit there is of making sure that we can minimize applications for faster deployment, with the benefit of using only a chunk of that application for that type of device. And this is why we're changing to the app bundle perspective. And the first 3 videos will give you more insights on the how, the why, and especially the how you can achieve this using, for example, Android Studio to import your current APK and convert this to AAB format, and how you can upload this into Play. So I think that's a very comprehensive one. That's actually the YouTube video. Then you have a security transparency report, where you can clearly see divided on a per quarter base how we're actually doing with PHAs and detecting those on Android enterprise devices. And there you will see on every Android version, it goes down and down and down, and it's now already below 0.004%. Then you have the Android Enterprise Security White Paper, which is a very comprehensive paper, around 60 pages, which gives you very detailed information about everything that I've been talking about today. And then, of course, there have been some changes, which we already discussed about last time. Work profile security on company-owned devices, which is very important to understand what the changes are. And there is a great document on Android 11, which you can find on the link that I posted here as well. So this is what I put together for you based on this webinar today.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mirko.
Thanks so much, Mirko. So we'll hand things back off over to Amy.
Yes, thank you, everybody. And as has already been communicated, both part 1 and part 2 will be available, made available on demand. They'll be added to the events page, that the pages where you went to register for this event. And I will also be sharing the slides with you all after the event. So many thanks, and we will end today. Thank you to our speakers and to our panelists. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.